Some phrases sound sweet or harmless the first time you hear them, but if you listen closely, they often reveal something darker. They can be signs of manipulation, of someone refusing to take responsibility, or of a deep unwillingness to grow. And when a woman ignores these red flags, she risks falling into relationships that slowly drain her, confuse her, and separate her from her own strength. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the hidden part of ourselves where we bury the traits we don't want to admit. In relationships, this shadow often shows itself in toxic patterns that repeat over and over. That's why noticing certain words early on can save you from long-term pain. Imagine this: you're dating a man who says with a calm, almost vulnerable tone, "You just have to accept me as I am." At first, it sounds like authenticity, even courage. But soon you realize he uses it as a shield. Every time you bring up something that hurts you, his dismissiveness, his cold silence, his little acts of manipulation, he hides behind that phrase. "That's just who I am," he says, as if it were noble. But it isn't. Jung taught that real growth begins the moment we stop making excuses and turn toward our flaws. The truth is, when someone refuses to grow, they aren't authentic, they're stagnant. And if you accept that, you doom yourself to rowing a boat alone while he won't even step in. You become the one adjusting, sacrificing, carrying all the emotional weight, while he keeps repeating the same behaviors. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's an act of self-respect. Real love isn't about tolerating the unacceptable, it's about sharing life with someone willing to face their shadows too. Then comes another phrase, one that sounds like casual venting but is far more dangerous: "All my exes were crazy." At first you might feel sympathy, maybe even think he's finally found someone different to you. But this story he repeats says more about him than it does about them. If every woman in his past was toxic, what does that say about his choices? More importantly, what does it say about his refusal to look at his own reflection? Epictetus, the Stoic, reminded us that it's not events themselves that disturb us, but the way we interpret them. A man who always blames his exes has not learned to interpret honestly. He's rewriting history to avoid responsibility, projecting his flaws outward instead of owning them. You can almost hear Jung's warning echo: what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves controls us from the shadows. A man who insists he was only ever the victim will eventually play out the same script with you. At first he'll treat you as the one exception, the woman who finally understands him. But slowly, when conflict arises, you'll see the pattern repeat. He'll cast you in the same role he gave to all his exes, and you'll find yourself in a story that isn't really yours at all, but is unresolved shadow acting itself out again and again. The question you must ask yourself is simple: can it really be true that every past partner was the problem? Or is the problem sitting right in front of you, smiling, convincing, but unwilling to face his own truth? Jung said, "What we deny submits us." If he cannot take responsibility for his past, he won't take responsibility for his present either. And that means no matter how much love, patience, or energy you pour in, the foundation will always be unstable, like building a house on sand. Some words carry hidden weight. They can look harmless, even tender, but behind them is a dangerous game that slowly eats away at your peace and self-worth. Imagine being with a man who talks about his exes as if he was always the victim. "They were all crazy, toxic, impossible to deal with," he says. At first, you may nod along, thinking he just had bad luck. You might even feel special, believing you're different, that this time. Being in that kind of relationship feels like rowing a boat with a hole in it. You pour in your love, your patience, your forgiveness, but the boat keeps sinking. Why? Because no matter how hard you work, he refuses to take responsibility for his own flaws. And the question you must ask yourself is simple: has he ever admitted his mistakes? Has he ever said, "I did this wrong, and I learned from it"? If the answer is no, don't fool yourself into thinking you'll be the one to change him. You're not meant to be his therapist or his savior. You're meant to walk beside someone who knows how to walk on his own. And just when you think you've gained his trust, another phrase may come: "If you really loved me, you'd do what I ask." On the surface, it sounds like a plea for affection, a way of saying, "Show me you care." But in reality, it's one of the most dangerous traps. This isn't love speaking, it's emotional blackmail. It uses your heart as leverage to control your actions. Each time you give in, you lose a little more of yourself. At first, it's just one compromise, one small act to prove your love. But soon it becomes a routine, a cycle of bending, submitting, and silencing yourself just to avoid guilt. The Stoics warned against this kind of false love. True love cannot be demanded, it must be chosen freely. And Jung saw it clearly too. When someone masks control as affection, they're projecting their own insecurity, not offering love. When a man says, "If you really loved me, you'd do it," he's not asking for connection, he's asking for power. He's saying, "Your love is only valuable if it serves me." That's not a partnership, that's possession. And the more you play by those rules, the less you recognize yourself. One day you wake up and realize you're living a life built on someone else's desires, while your own have been buried. And then, the most poisonous phrase of all, "You're not enough for me." Those words cut straight to the soul. They don't just hurt your feelings, they attack your very identity. They're designed to shatter your confidence and make you dependent on his approval. But here's the secret: when a man says this, he isn't exposing your weakness, he's exposing his own emptiness. Jung explained that people often project their inner dissatisfaction onto others. So when he says "you're not enough," what he really means is "I'm not enough, and I don't want to face it." This is how control works. He tries to shrink you so you doubt your worth, so you start running in circles, trying to prove yourself to him, trying to fill a void that doesn't belong to you. And yet, no matter how much you give, it will never be enough, because the hole is in him, not in you. The truth is, love is not about breaking someone down, it's about lifting each other up. A man who truly loves you will never use guilt to control you, never use words to make you smaller, never project his insecurities onto your spirit. Love, as Jung said, is a conscious act of freedom. It's not about possession or blackmail, but about walking side by side, respecting each other's boundaries, and growing together. That's why when you hear these phrases, "You have to accept me as I am," "All my exes were crazy," "If you really love me, you'd do it," or "You're not enough for me," you must pause. They may sound simple, but they carry the weight of toxic patterns, of shadows left unexamined, of wounds left unhealed. And if you accept them without question, you risk losing the most precious thing you have, your connection to yourself. A woman who respects her peace knows this truth: protecting your heart is not selfish, it is survival. You are not here to save a man who refuses to face his shadow. You are here to live fully, to grow, and to share your life with someone who does the same. Because love should never be a cage. Love should be the freedom to be yourself, completely and without fear. There are certain words that don't just pass through the air, they linger in your chest. They echo. They make you question yourself, even when you know you shouldn't. And if you don't catch them early, they become chains. Invisible at first, but heavy with time. Many women have found themselves waking up one day in a relationship where their laughter feels forced, their confidence feels faint, and their sense of worth depends on the moods of someone else. But it rarely begins with shouting or cruelty. It begins with phrases. Picture this: you share your concerns, maybe about the way he dismisses your feelings, maybe about his lack of effort. Instead of listening, he looks at you calmly and says, "You just have to accept me as I am." At first, you think it's honesty, even vulnerability. But then, slowly, you see the truth. Those words are not an invitation for love, they are a shield against growth. Every mistake, every neglect, every pattern that hurts you, hidden behind those 6 words. What he's really saying is, don't expect me to change. Don't expect me to meet you halfway. Your role is to carry the weight while I stay still. And here's the tragedy: love without growth turns into a prison. Carl Jung taught that becoming whole requires facing the shadow, not running from it. A man who refuses to grow is not asking for love, he's demanding comfort at your expense. Then one day, as you listen to him speak about his past, you notice a pattern. All my exes were crazy. Toxic. Impossible. He says it with conviction, as if the world itself has conspired against him. At first, you might laugh or even sympathize. Maybe you think, I'll be different. I'll be the one who understands him. But if you look closer, the pattern becomes chilling. Every story makes him the hero, or worse, the victim, and every woman before you the villain. What does that mean for you? Sooner or later, the same story will be told about you. Because someone who cannot accept their own faults will always find a new scapegoat. Loving such a man is like pouring water into a cracked vessel, it will never be enough, because nothing stays inside. Ask yourself, has he ever admitted, yes, I made mistakes too? If not, know this, you are not his redemption arc. You are not here to heal the wounds he refuses to face. And then comes the test disguised as love. If you really loved me, you'd do what I ask. At first, it sounds like a plea for closeness. But over time, it reveals itself for what it is: emotional blackmail. Love becomes conditional, measured in how much of yourself you can sacrifice. At first, it's small: cancel plans, adjust your tone, give a little more than you wanted to. But it never stops at small. The demands grow until your boundaries aren't boundaries anymore, they're broken pieces at his feet. And you start to ask yourself, maybe I am not loving enough? Maybe I should do more? That's the trick. That's how control hides itself inside the language of affection. But as the Stoics remind us, true love must be chosen freely, never demanded. A man who forces you to prove your love isn't looking for a partner. He's looking for property. Then, when you are most vulnerable, when you've bent and given and tried, he drops the phrase that feels like a dagger: you're not enough for me. Those words cut deeper than anger. Deeper than silence. They make you look in the mirror and wonder if something is truly broken inside you. But here's what you must see clearly: when he says those words, he is not describing you. He is revealing himself. A man who says you're not enough is not full of clarity, he is full of emptiness. He projects his own inadequacy, his own restless ego, onto you. Jung explained that what we cannot face in ourselves, we cast upon others. His words are not truth, they are projection. And yet, they work, because they make you fight harder for his approval. But here's the trap: the rules keep changing. Today, you're not enough in one way. Tomorrow, in another. And so you spend years chasing a finish line that was never meant to be crossed. Remember this: your worth is not a negotiation. It is not something a blind man can define simply because he cannot see your light. And finally, the phrase that seems harmless but is perhaps the most poisonous of them all: do whatever you want. Spoken with warmth, it could be freedom. Spoken with coldness, sarcasm, or bitterness, it becomes a trap. He's not granting you space. He's baiting you into guilt. He wants you to doubt yourself, to question whether you're selfish, to wonder if choosing for yourself means betraying him. And when you do make a choice, he punishes you not with open confrontation, but with silence, reproach, or drama. This is not communication. It is manipulation. As Seneca said, speak in a way that your words need no interpretation. Love that requires you to decode moods, tones, and hidden resentments is not love. It's a battlefield. Each of these phrases: accept me as I am. All my exes were crazy. If you loved me, you'd do it. You're not enough for me. Do whatever you want. They look ordinary on the surface. But beneath them lie excuses, victimhood, control, projection, and manipulation. These are not the seeds of love. They are the roots of entrapment. And if you don't make them conscious, as Jung warned, they will shape your fate. But here is the power: the moment you recognize them, you are free. You are no longer caught in the spell of someone else's words. You remember what Marcus Aurelius said: do not let another man's soul rule over yours. Your peace is not a gift for someone else to handle. Your worth is not up for debate. And your freedom is not something to be negotiated through guilt. The wisest choice is not to stay and prove them wrong. The wisest choice is to walk away with dignity, with clarity, and with self-respect. Because love, true love, is not found in these games. Love is found where growth is mutual, where communication is clear, and where your spirit is not diminished, but expanded. So the next time you hear these words, pause. Breathe. See them for what they are. And remember, you are not here to play small so someone else can feel big. You are here to live fully, freely, and fearlessly as yourself. There's a kind of language that doesn't look dangerous at first glance. Words that seem simple, even harmless. But when you look closer, you realize they're not communication at all, they're manipulation. When someone speaks to you in riddles, when they throw out phrases with hidden meanings, they aren't being direct with you. They're keeping you guessing. And that guessing game is the trap. Because once you're caught in it, you stop living from your own choices and start living according to their moods. Think about it. You hear something like "do whatever you want" spoken with coldness, sarcasm, or a bitter edge. On the surface, it looks like freedom. But you can feel the weight under those words. It's not freedom, it's pressure. Pressure to guess what they really mean. Pressure to adjust your decision so you won't face guilt or drama later. And slowly, without realizing it, you start bending yourself. You explain too much. You second guess. You try to soften your choices so they won't be upset. And piece by piece, your peace of mind erodes. You're no longer standing in your own center, you're orbiting around their emotions. But here's the truth: a woman who has cultivated emotional intelligence does not play that game. She doesn't waste her life trying to decode silence, or reading between lines that should never have been hidden in the first place. She knows her value, and she understands that clarity is love, while ambiguity is control. That's why the most powerful response to "do whatever you want" is simple: take it literally. Do it. Make your choice. Act with confidence, without fear, without long explanations. Because that one act breaks the cycle. It says clearly, "I don't belong to this emotional trap." And when you do that, something shifts. The manipulator has only two options: either they grow up and learn to speak directly, or they remain trapped in their own silence. But either way, they lose the power to control you because you've stepped out of the game. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide and project onto others. Passive-aggressive phrases like these are pure shadow at work. They're not honesty, they're projection. And Stoic philosophy adds the same wisdom: real love and real strength are built on clear words, not hidden ones. Seneca himself said it best: speak in such a way that your words don't require interpretation. So when a man plays these games, don't fall for the illusion. Don't try to solve the riddle. Ambiguity is not a sign of depth, it's a tool of control. And a conscious woman knows her role is not to translate someone else's silence, but to honor her own truth. That's why the Stoic response is so powerful: remain calm, act firmly, and refuse to let unclear words rule your peace. True emotional discipline is not about fighting or proving a point, but about protecting your clarity. Because here's the heart of it: a man who truly loves you, who truly respects you, doesn't need to manipulate. He doesn't need to test your loyalty through guilt or sarcasm. He shows up with honesty, with transparency, with words that don't leave you questioning yourself, but instead strengthen the bond between you. And that's what real love looks like: two people standing in clarity, choosing each other freely, without games. Inner peace begins when your thoughts, your words, and your actions are aligned. When you no longer bend to every hidden meaning, but instead stand tall in your truth. So the next time you hear a phrase that makes you feel small, confused, or guilty, pause. Look deeper. Because those words are not just casual remarks. They're signs. Signs of a pattern that, if ignored, will drain your energy, your focus, and your very essence. Both Jung and the Stoics give us the same wisdom: don't just listen to the words. See the pattern. Protect your center with strength and clarity. Because this journey is not about judging others, it's about refusing to lose yourself in someone else's shadows.